My name is Rachel, and you're watching the Rachalistic channel. Welcome back to my channel. So today I'm going to be sharing the story of how I found out that I'm autistic and have ADHD. I wanted to share my story so that maybe it could help others who are going through the same things that I went through, or so that it can maybe help others learn more about neurodivergent people like me. Either way, I hope that this story helps. Before I get into the story, I just want to say that I'll be talking about Asperger's in this first part of the story because that's all I knew back then. I know that the term Asperger's is not a thing anymore and some people find it triggering, so I just want to let you know that I will be using that term for this first part of my story. So my story starts in middle school, but I'm not gonna start in middle school. Middle school is when I realized that my brain was different from others, but I think it's important for me to start from when I was a little kid so that it can help you to understand the full story better and I guess me better. So when I was a kid, I felt different from others, but not because I felt that my brain was different from others, but for lots of different other reasons. One of them being that I'm Black, as you can see. The entirety of my childhood, I grew up in areas where it was predominantly white. So I felt different because I obviously looked different from the other kids in my class. I also felt different for a little bit for like the first 3 years of school because my family was living in Quebec. And if you don't know where Quebec is or anything about Quebec, it is the French speaking province of Canada. So everything in there is French. And my family was English speaking. So when I went to school, I was like the only English speaker or like one of the very few kids whose first language was English. And so I felt different because I spoke English and I knew how to speak French, but I had to learn and, you know, it made me feel different. What's ironic is that when my family was living in Quebec, I felt different because I knew less French than my peers. But when my family moved to Ontario, where everything is in English, I still felt different because then I knew more French than my peers. So yeah, French has always been one of those things that's in my life that just makes me feel different, I guess. But those aren't the only reasons why I felt different. I also felt different because I was a vegetarian before being a vegetarian was cool. So a lot of times at school, my friends would be like, "Oh, what are you eating? What's that?" And they'd ask questions and they think it's weird. So yeah, I was also different because my family is Seventh-day Adventist, and so we went to church on Saturdays, and I couldn't hang out with my friends on Saturdays or do things on Friday nights, and they never, I don't know, it was like weird to my friends, I guess, because most people go to church on Sundays. But yeah, so that was another thing that kind of made me feel different from my peers. So, like I said before, there are so many reasons why I felt different as a kid, but my brain just wasn't one of them. I think that because there were so many other reasons why I was different from my peers, it just never really registered to me that like my brain could also be different from my peers. So I just never realized until I was like in middle school. It became more apparent, I guess, to me when I was in middle school. But don't get me wrong, as a kid, there were definitely signs of me being autistic and having ADHD, but nobody really noticed it because nobody really knew much about these things. If anybody did know anything about autism or ADHD back when I was little, they just knew the stereotypes. So when they saw me, a little Black girl who does well in school and has friends and seems to be doing okay, she's just a little shy, but she likes to play with her imaginary friends at home, but she's pretty good. You know, they did not equate that with autism or ADHD or anything. I think it's safe to say that I flew under the radar as a kid. I flew under the radar for my entire life, actually, I should say. Let's fast forward to when I'm 12 and my family is getting ready to move town again. So when I was 12, we were living in Ontario in a new town, and before that we were living in Quebec. And we moved from Quebec when I was 9. So at that point, when I was 12, this was going to be the third time. Wait, Quebec to Ontario? Okay, that was going to be the second time that I was moving. And I was surprisingly, I was actually kind of excited to move because I was going to be going to middle school. And I thought middle school was going to be a blast. I used to read a lot of novels about middle school at that age. So honestly, thinking back on this, it makes absolutely no sense because all of the books I read about middle school, there was always drama. The main character was always sad at some point. Like it really didn't seem that great, but for some reason, I thought that it was going to be great to go to middle school. So, yeah, I don't know. I thought that middle school was going to be great. I thought I was going to have like this amazing best friend and there was going to be a cute boy and all the drama and we were going to be great. And I don't know why I thought it was going to be great, but I did think it was going to be great. So, yeah. Before middle school, I had a very unrealistic idea of how to make friends. When we moved when I was 9 to Ontario, um it was I literally did nothing to make friends. I walked in, me and my sister, we came off the school bus, we were walking to the playground, our first day of the new school. This girl from my class, because we had gone the previous day to see the school and see our class, so they knew that we were going to be there the next day. So, anyways, a girl from my class comes up to me and's like, "Hey, do you want to be my friend?" And I was like, "Okay." So, yeah, I thought it was going to be like that every time I moved or anytime I had to make friends. I thought it was just going to be easy like that. Like someone come up and say, "Do you want to be my friend?" Easy as that. Unfortunately, I was very wrong. So I didn't go to middle school until a month later than everyone else. The first month of school, I was at my old school, which was a K to 8 school, so from kindergarten all the way to grade 8. So there was no middle school really. But this new school that I was going to was a middle school, so it's just grade 7 and grade 8. And so, yeah, I started a month later than everyone else. So everyone in my class, they already, got to know each other a little bit and they already had their little friend groups and stuff. So when I came in, it was kind of like an awkward time because like everybody had already sorted that stuff out and now I'm here. So it's like, oh, okay. Yeah. So on my first day of school at recess, the first recess actually, I remember I I started to go like towards the entrance to go outside, but then I was like, wait, I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know who I'm gonna talk to. I got like really scared for a second. So then I like went to the bathroom and yeah, I kind of like teared up a little bit and I cried a little bit because I was like, I don't know who's gonna talk to me. Like I don't want to be alone, right? So after I like calmed down a little bit, then I went outside and I kind of like was like unsure of what to do. But then some girls in my class, they saw me, they invited me to come and hang out with them or whatever during that recess. So I was like, okay, cool. I got people to hang out with. During the second recess, I went outside and kind of just stood by a wall. And then they came out and then they saw me and they're like, hey, Rachel, come and hang out with us. And I was like, okay, cool. So that was that. So yeah, the first day of school went pretty well, I guess. I mean, some girls talked to me and I thought I had like some good friends now and it was good and everything would be great. But the second day of school didn't quite go the same. So during recess, I went out and stood by the wall like I had done the day before, but this time I guess the girls in my class didn't see me and they kind of just walked by. So I just kind of ended up staying there alone for the recess. Yeah, I wasn't really sure what I was supposed to do. Like, I didn't know if I should, like, go up to them now because they talked to me the day before, if I had to wait for them to see me and invite me again. And I was like really unsure of what to do. So I kind of just stayed at the wall. And every recess, I would go out and stand by that wall and just kind of wait for anything, something to happen, I guess. And yeah, yeah. So it became, I guess, my routine. Every single day, I would go out at recess and just stand by this wall by myself. And I think at that point, the other kids thought that I wanted to be there by myself every day. So they would just like, sometimes they would like talk to me or like whatever, and then they would just like walk away, or like they'd be like, "Oh, hi, Rachel," and they keep walking, like, because I guess they thought I wanted to be alone, but I didn't. I was just waiting for someone to come and be my friend, but that didn't. That's not how making. That's not how you make friends. I didn't know that. I didn't know what to do. So yeah. So I basically just stood by myself at a wall for the majority of grade 7 and a good chunk of grade 8. The thing is, it's not like I didn't have friends during middle school, because I guess I had like friends in my class. Like if like, I don't know, when we were like eating lunch and stuff in class, like I had someone to sit with, or like if we had to like partner up and do stuff, like I had someone to partner up with. Like we would talk in class, but at recess, I was just always alone. So it was like I didn't really have a consistent friend, I guess, in middle school. Yeah. And then in grade 8, a group of girls invited me into their friend group. So like during recess in grade 8, for like the most part, I had a group of friends, I guess, to hang out with during recess, but for the majority of grade 7 and still like quite a bit of grade 8, well, I would say like 1/3 of grade 8, I was just standing by myself at a wall. With that being my reality every day, um, it wasn't long before I started thinking that something was wrong with me. I remember I got to see my friends from my old school during like a day off school, I don't remember, in grade 7. And they asked me, like, oh, do you have friends? And I was like, no. And then they told me to like talk to people and talk to them about stuff. And I was like, okay. But in my mind, I'm thinking, like, I don't really know how to talk to people, like, what to talk to them about. I also remember hearing a lot to that, like, joining clubs helps you make friends. And I would join clubs, but I would join the clubs and I would just be there by myself. I remember I was in the glee club at school and I would just sit there by myself and everyone's talking to their friends. And I'm just like, cool. Like, I didn't know, I didn't see how joining a club would help me make friends if nobody talked to me. So, yeah. I joined the clubs, nothing happened. I had a lot of trouble talking to people and like starting conversations. So, that was not an option for me to try and make friends. And so, I would, I remember I would like try and find like new advice like on the internet of like how to make friends, but it's always the same thing, join clubs and talk to people. So I was just, it was very frustrating. And, I very quickly came to the conclusion that if I can't do these things, then there must be something wrong with me. So all of my life, um, I've been described as shy. So, because I mean, I was shy. I'm not very talkative, and a lot of times people would like ask me or ask my parents or whatever, like, oh, why doesn't Rachel talk so much or whatever? And they'd be like, oh, she's just shy, or that's just the way she is. And in the moment, it's like, it sounds nice, like, oh, yeah, that's just the way she is. But in the long run, it wasn't very helpful to have people say that all the time because I thought that I was the only one who was like me. And so it kind of just made me feel bad about myself. I remember in grade 7, I would think a lot to myself, like, I'm not just shy. Because, when I thought about people who are shy, it's somebody who, is a little bit, who's like quiet and like nervous to talk to people at first, but then once you get to know them, like you're fine. But I had found that I still didn't really know how to talk to people or like carry conversations, even if I knew them very well. And so I would think to myself, like, I'm not just shy. Shy people know how to have conversations. Shy people have friends, they make friends, but like, I can't do that. And so I kept thinking to myself, like, I'm not just shy. There has to be something else. I'm not just shy. It wouldn't be until grade 8 that I would learn what that something else was. Well, kind of. So in 2013, when I was in grade 8, my aunt told my mom about how my cousin was diagnosed with Asperger's. And so, my mom was telling me and my sister about it. And I remember I had a phone at that point, so I remember I at night before I was like going to bed, I was like looking up on my phone like what Asperger's is because I didn't really understand what it was. So I looked it up and I found some like generic description, like I don't know, whatever it says on Google when you look up Asperger's. And so I saw it and I was like, okay, like it didn't really mean anything to me. Like I was like, okay, cool, whatever. But then something told me to look up Asperger's in girls because I don't know. I really had no reason to look that up, but something just like, hey, look up Asperger's in girls, see what shows up. So I was like, okay. So I typed it in, Asperger's in girls, and what I found was an article by Dr. Tony Atwood, and I don't really remember exactly what was on that article anymore. Like, it's been a really long time, but I do remember that it was about like Asperger's in girls and women and how it looks different from boys. And it gave like a description of what it might look like. And I think it talked about masking in there. I remember I remember it talked about how girls' special interests might be different from boys' special interests, and they might like things like literature and horses or dolls or something like that. I remember thinking to myself, I'm like, oh, I really like to read. Like, I was like a serious bookworm at the time. So I'm like, well, I like to read a lot. And like, I like dolls. Like, yeah, I would have never told anybody this when I was that age, but I used to like looking at like the American Girl doll website and like creating like dolls that look like me, even though I would never get one because I was like 14 at the time. But I did I did like things like that. And I remember it also talked about how girls with Asperger's might have like imaginary friends for like a long time, like when they're supposed to be like too old to have imaginary friends. And I kind of still had imaginary friends at that age. I used to do this thing that I called pretending, and I would just like basically just live in an imaginary world in my head. Like I would have, I would put myself in a random storyline and create all these imaginary characters that I'd be talking to and interacting with like pretty much all day. And it was all in my head and nobody knew about it, but it was basically imaginary friends. And um yeah, so when I saw that, I was like, oh, wait, that's me. I'm like, I do that. And I'm sure it also talked about like difficulties like making friends and stuff like that, or like being shy And I'm like, well, that's also me. When I read the entire list, I was like, whoa, I'm like, that's me. I'm like, I think I might have Asperger's. That was a pretty shocking night for me when I was 14. So that's where I'm going to end the story for today. I'm not really sure how long this is going to be, but I know that the next part of the story is just going to make this whole thing longer. So I'm splitting it into two just so I don't have like an hour-long video for you guys to watch. So yeah. So the next part of the story will be up next week, so stay tuned for that. But in the meantime, if you like the story so far, if you're enjoying it, or if you, it's kind of sad to be honest at this point, but if you like it, then just hit the like button. I don't know what else to say. If you have any questions or you have anything that you would like to say, then go ahead and comment them down below, because it'd be nice to see what you guys have to say. And if you like my content, if you like watching my videos, then please subscribe and hit that notification bell so that you know when I post next, especially since there's going to be a part 2 to this story. So yeah, thanks for watching, and stay Rachelistic, or whatever your name is, istic. Bye.